Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting into the new Darkhold miniseries, which teases the return of Chthon with the recent discovery of the True Darkhold, which has now unlocked the possibility of Chthon coming back to Earth in his full power and full glory. And I'm just here to see if it's really gonna happen this time. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch your spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so right away with the way that this starts off, we begin in the underground city of Abysmia. And with Abysmia, like back in the early 1940s, this was set up to be like your underground, highly technologically advanced city, or really more so kingdom, that was built under the United States by early European settlers. But also back at this time, in the days of when industrial accidents would give you powers, you had then had the case of Daniel Rose, who was like the sole survivor when a mine collapsed, and due to strange gases leaking in, he got super strength. But with him going under the identity of Rockman, he had eventually fled the surface world after the death of his family to then later become the ruler of Abysmia, but this was also used much later on to the case of where we would then find stories to where Rockman had eventually used the tools of his kingdom to help out Captain America like in World War II. But what we come to find jumping in is that someone has taken much of this technology for their own purposes, but then also that they've come here to find the True Darkhold. And real quickly we come to find out that this person was successful. But before we go further, I do want to point out that throughout Marvel Comics we have seen the True Darkhold before, but then also there's been a number of copies that were made from the True Darkhold, whether to sidestep the effect of being either controlled or transformed by the book, because there's always been this effect to where if someone reads too much of the Darkhold, then they themselves could be transformed by the spells, driven mad, or just completely controlled by Chthon. And with the Darkhold originally being a way that Chthon can make his way back, there's also said to have been a history to where other gods had also placed in their wards against him, and we'll see more of that in here shortly. But with the True Darkhold recently being discovered, it's here we then jump into this nightmare of how the near future could play out with the True Darkhold being used to release Chthon, to where in this case it's not only as like a possession with him taking over someone's body, which we do see a bit of here, but literally physically bringing him back to Earth. But also in this nightmare with us seeing things like the heroes getting overtaken and a Chthon possessed Franklin Richards killing his sister Valeria, and right away it just shows us that as soon as this invasion started, the exposure alone to Chthon and his army, it was practically useless to go up against, because quickly after, anyone who would see, smell, or hear these creatures, let alone Chthon himself, they would then be driven into madness. But then quickly we find out that this nightmare was had by Wanda Maximoff, who as we know is connected to Chthon from birth, to where at the time Chthon was trapped within Wundagore Mountain. But then it's here where we go back to Abysmia, to where we find that it's Victorious who's got her hands on the Darkhold. And with seeing her right away, we know that Doom's involved because of her dedication to both Doom and Latveria. So just by seeing her alone, you know Doom's not too far away. And I mean really the look of these particular Doom bots was a giveaway too, so I guess you can say there's also that. But with her finding the True Darkhold, she then goes to take it to Doom, but before she can make her way, she's then confronted by the Scarlet Witch. And when this happens, you do have the case to where Victorious, she does wield the power cosmic to a degree, because at one point she was given that power by Dr. Doom, and really to the point to where it's just enough to like lure out Galactus, but it's never really been on par with someone like the Silver Surfer or your classic Thanos, who also had the power cosmic. Because at the end of the day, with Victorious, she's a human who has this power, but even still she needs her staff in order to stabilize it. But with Wanda arriving here and going up against Victorious, this is ended pretty quickly, and with this happening, it's much to the surprise of Victorious, because she thought she'd win just because she wields the power cosmic. But even with that being the case, Wanda lets her know rather quickly that it's not so much about brute strength, than rather the use of experience when going up against someone. But then it's not too long after this to where then Dr. Doom shows up, and right away there's like this awkward moment because of their time together during the Children's Crusade, which was a bit of a weird story, but a good one, but still weird, because within the Children's Crusade it deals with the aftermath of House of M, to where Wanda, after the loss of her children, she had went to Dr. Doom for his help to get them back, which then led to them combining their powers and using Wanda as a Nexus being in order to control the life force itself and do so. But with Wanda getting this power, it then took over with the life force possessing her and taking her up to God level, but from that moment there was a gap in her memory up until she was sought out after by her son Wiccan and given her memory back after time traveling with Iron Lad and the Young Avengers. But during the time when Wanda had lost her memory, she had then fell in love with Doom and they were supposed to get married, but we would find out later on that he was only using her to steal her power, which he succeeded in doing for a short while when Wanda had attempted to restore all the mutants who had lost their powers during House of M. But with Wiccan reopening the portal and overcharging Doom, This had then forced Doom to forfeit the power, but in his last moments before teleporting away, and also in a sense of him pridefully needing to tell Wanda that he can handle more power than her by telling her she's only a Nexus creature, she's only a conduit, and that alone Wanda couldn't destroy the Avengers or rid the world of mutants because it was truly him all along. And a lot of this history comes back quickly within Darkhold Alpha, because with Wanda finding out that Doom has the true Darkhold, she lets him know right away that he has no idea what the true power of Chthon feels like. And she should know with her being possessed by him multiple times, and also more recently within Secret Empire. But also with Doom knowing that reading from the Darkhold directly will just drive you mad, and in a way to sidestep this, he had just been using his Doom bots and reading through them. And with hearing this, Wanda tells Doom that he's the reason why Chthon had taunted her with the nightmare of him returning from the other realm. And with the combination of Doom being capable of reading the Darkhold, along with Wanda's connection to Chthon, it's here where she tells him that they have to work together so that she can search the Darkhold for answers and stop Chthon for good. Because if not, the nightmare she had is going to become a reality. And with her saying this, it's then here where Doom shows her what he's been doing with the technology of Abysmia. Because along with the Abyssmian technology that we had talked about earlier, these people had also created the use of a device called a vibrograph, which at the time they would use to either monitor the surface or create earthquakes, but it's here in the case of Doom to where he's repurposed the vibrograph to pierce other dimensions rather than just listen through a bunch of rocks. And with doing this, the Darkhold will act like a compass and steer the vibrograph and lead him to Chthon. But then it's here where Wanda comes to an agreement with Doom, and you know how he is with those, but then they come to an agreement to where they'll find out how to defeat Chthon by using Wanda's method, but then as far as executing the plan, they'll use Doom's method and make their way to him by use of the vibrograph. But also with going through with this agreement, they then find a story that makes mention of the Darkhold Defenders. And amongst these five, you had the Dreamer, the Fool, the Stoic, the Hunter, and the Artist. And though they were successful at pushing Chthon back into his Other Realm prison, but for them, entering Other Realm had cost them their sanity. And though Wanda suggests that they possibly do a spell to reform this team, but Doom quickly shoots down the idea because he believes that he's all five of those men put into one. And with saying this, he then just takes off and goes to Other Realm to face Chthon by himself. Because in his mind and his heart, he just believes he's that guy, which is typical Dr. Doom. And don't take me wrong, sometimes he is, but this time, I got high hopes for you, Victor. We gon' see. But in any case, with Doom just up and leaving, Wanda, she then looks to Victorious, so that together with Wanda's chaos magic and Victorious having the power cosmic, which grants her cosmic awareness, and it's here where Wanda then uses this to bring in 5 different heroes in order to recreate a new version of the Darkhold Defenders. And with setting this up, she brings in Iron Man as the Dreamer, Blade as the Hunter, Wasp as the Artist, Black Bolt as the Stoic, and Spider-Man as the Fool, which is kind of messed up. Like, Peter deserves a little bit more respect on his name, but here we are. But with them getting here and Wanda explaining to them the threat of Chthon returning in full, and even to the point of not needing a vessel because of the true Darkhold being unearthed by Doom, which also was a thing with Carnage at one point that we talked about, as far as Chthon actually coming back, but nobody acknowledges it here, so I'm just gonna leave it alone. But then we also get the case here to where Blade suggests that they just destroy the book in order to keep Chthon from returning, but with it being made of the flesh of an Elder God, that's a bit more easier said than done. But then also with Blade making this suggestion, like there's also this thing of like, okay, so if the book is made from the flesh of an Elder God, which is, you know, Chthon's sibling, then if you can't destroy the book, then what you gonna do to Chthon? But along with that, we're also given the idea that along with Chthon being initially banished, other gods had filled his book with wards against him. And with this being the case, it hints towards the idea of the answers to stopping Chthon being within the Darkhold as well. Which again, that then brings back the idea of turning these guys into the new Darkhold Defenders. But then in order to do so, they also had to read a portion of the Darkhold, and just enough so that they can make this transformation and not completely go crazy. But with hearing the plan at this point, everybody's practically on board except for Black Bolt. And when Black Bolt gives his reasoning, which Tony translates through his suit, and it's here where he tells them that the Inhumans, they've lost a lot, which is an understatement, with them nearly being wiped out completely after death of the Inhumans, which really only left like literally a handful of the Inhumans remaining. And aside from that, you do have the exception of him helping out Doctor Strange to go up against Galactus, who was super OP after ingesting a planet that transformed him into a hybrid of extreme science and extreme magic, which also got Black Bolt killed, but he was brought back later on. But nonetheless, the reason for his hesitation, it comes from the fact of him and what's left of his people, they're still in a place of healing. And as far as he's concerned at this moment, he feels like his priority is to be with them. But then right in the middle of this, Doom comes back and he looks wrecked. But with them getting there and Black Bolt and the others asking what he saw, he doesn't tell them a thing. But even still, we get a glimpse of what happened with Doom in Otherrealm, which initially was just a pile of others who had also made their way there and got destroyed. But then not long after, he was then completely overwhelmed by numbers so crazy that he barely made his way out of there. But with Doom thinking back on how Chthon's attackers had just stole on him, he lets Wanda and the others know that what he saw was for Doom's eyes only. And when he says this, Wanda, she's definitely pissed because any information he could give up could be huge in giving the others a fighting chance with them knowing anything about what they're up against. But even still, Doom, he gives up no details and he gives Victorious permission to stay with them for whatever help they may need. And just before he teleports out of there, he lets them know that Chthon had made a mistake by allowing him to leave alive, because when Chthon makes his way to Earth, Doom will be ready. But then after this, you also get this moment to where they start to reason with Black Bolt, or initially more so than reasoning, they're telling him like, hey, you gonna read this book. But some of the things that eventually convince him is the combination of him hearing the conversation of Wasp saying, if they did this to Doom, then we all need to be united going over there. And on top of that, with Blade letting him know that he's not the only person that this world has wronged, but in this moment they gotta put that aside because each one of them is needed to stop this ancient evil. But as they each go through the Darkhold and not really knowing how long to read it, or where or when exactly to stop really, because initially when they do, they kind of feel like nothing had happened. But then like seconds later, the Darkhold hit, and it was a little late, it was a little delayed, but when it hit, it was crazy. But when this happened and they underwent their transformation, immediately Wanda was like, they'd read too far. And as a result, instead of us getting the Darkhold Defenders, they had become the Darkhold Defiled, which I think looks way better than what they would have turned to if they were just Darkhold Defenders. Because those bodies that Doom had also saw in Otherrealm, those were likely other defenders as well. And this whole mishap of these guys turning into the Darkhold Defiled, it just might turn out to be the advantage that they need to pull this off. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.